Hey guys, it's Daniel Faust and Learn and Live, and we are in the superhero sanctum with CEO Jeremy Knauff. I hacked it again. See, I practiced before the live, and now everybody's going to hold this to me forever. This guy is an amazing veteran, going over and started several businesses, working with Spartan Media, and he has graced his presence with us in his new studio, looking wonderful. You need to come over to Dover, Delaware, and convert my studio over. But he's going to go grace the presence in the superhero sanctum, talking about leadership, transformation, and his overall war hero stories. So thank you for joining. And let's jump into it to the first question. You can tell us your war hero story. How was the military? How long were you in? Hopefully you didn't hit too much combat, but we just wanted to hear where you came from.
Yeah, so I came in pretty much right after high school and was dead set on I wanted to go into recon. Ended up taking the indoc, passed that, and for whatever reason ended up turning it down and regretted that for the rest of my career. I spent the next couple of years trying to get back over there. That didn't work out. They didn't want to let me go because I was able to do a lot of shit. I was able to accomplish things that other people couldn't. So, I learned a lot of things really fast. I took a lot of initiative, taught myself things, went through a lot of stuff with the MCI program and just learning things on my own. Got pushed up the ranks pretty quickly. And one of the things I was doing, even though I was in an infantry unit, I had some other tasks that I had to handle as well. The communications within the company, as well as the MCI program. I think you and I were in the military in kind of different time frames, but this will give you kind of an idea of how I did things when I was in the MCI program, which it's basically a correspondence course for the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
All the various things that we need to learn. And it was a complete mess, right? They would take their test and we would send it off to MCI headquarters over in DC and they would lose it.
Old school paper.
Exactly. I mean, this was the old, the Scantron bubble sheets that we would.
Oh, wow. That was early 2000s.
Actually, it was late 90s.
Oh, yeah. I came in 2000.
Yeah. So, after several times of this happening, of course, I started making photocopies of all the tests. That way, when my Marines would take a test and MCI would screw it up, I could then send a copy of it back up there. And I would also make copies of the certificates that they would get because this stuff was all required for them to get the promotions.
Of course.
Well, this happened a few more times, and eventually we got to the point where it's like, this is just, it's ridiculous. So we rented a van, drove up to headquarters Marine Corps, showed up at MCI headquarters, knocked on the door. We have some problems. We need to talk. Sat down with all the paperwork. They were not happy, I can tell you that.
No.
But because of what we did, first of all, we solved the problem. They immediately, the commanding officer up there immediately sat down several of his guys and was like, just get this problem fixed. Great, we did that. But they did not want us showing up again. So I don't know if anybody else had problems, but after that, we never had another problem. Yeah. So I had a tendency to do things like that. Like if there was an objective that had to be done, I was going to get things done one way or the other. So because of that, I moved up the ranks pretty quickly, had a lot of interesting duties in addition to my normal infantry stuff. But eventually I got to the point where I decided that the Marine Corps wasn't going to be where I wanted to be for the rest of my life. Towards my last year was where I started to kind of make that determination. Continued to take care of my guys, do what had to be done there, but I started preparing for when it was time to get out. Started learning a lot about business, formulating a business plan, meeting people in the civilian world to kind of facilitate that transition. And, then eventually the day came when it was time to go, and that's what I did. And from there, I got out. I started my first business in 1999, a web design company in a little tiny town called Spring Hill, Florida. All right. So that was, it's still a pretty small town, but in 1999, that was not the right place to start a web design business.
Why is that? Why is that particular city a bad city?
Well, people didn't. You have to remember, this was back when a lot of people still thought the internet was just going to be a fad.
Yeah, it was pretty much a hoax in '99. Y2K, all that jazz. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I remember everybody telling me, "Oh, that's just a fad. Businesses don't need websites. Like we have our connections, and we go to the Chamber of Commerce, and
Ooh.
that's gonna go away." Right. So we see how that's all worked out.
Yeah.
So I started, and initially I didn't have a lot of contacts in the area, so it wasn't even like I could go and talk to people I knew and try to sell them on this service. I did some sales activities, admittedly nowhere near enough, but I
Mm.
think between the time and the place, it wasn't quite there yet.
Mhm.
So I failed very miserably, burned through all my money,
Yeah.
chewed up my credit score, and
I
eventually,
know that one.
well, I think if you're in the military at some point, that's almost a requirement. You have to tank your credit score, right?
Yeah, mine's about 450. I think I've tanked it.
Yeah, good times. But from that point, then it was kind of a rebuilding phase. I had at one point a nice portfolio and chewed through all of that, chewed up my credit score,
Mm.
lost the house, and then basically started over from zero. And at that point, it was a matter of finding a job, building a new foundation,
Mhm.
and kind of preparing for, we'll say, my counterattack. At that point, I took a job at an ad agency. This guy
Okay.
was amazing. He was quite possibly one of the smartest people that I ever had the pleasure to meet.
That's awesome.
David Kretschmar. He was a guy who'd been in advertising for pretty much since the dawn of time. We used to joke about him, hurting his leg running from the Big Bang. But he had seen everything. Like he was back in this. Here's a fun story for you. He was in this back when. Do you know anything about printing, like old school printing with like plates and all that?
I have some friends in that business. Yeah.
Okay. So back in the day, we used to shoot film, and
Hmm.
would have four different things. You would have for black, magenta, cyan, and yellow.
Mm.
And there was a job title in that industry back in the day called a stripper.
Oh
And
yeah.
what they would do is they would take this solution, and if you ever look real close, like on newsprint, you can see it really well. If you look up
Mm.
close, you can see these little tiny dots
Yeah.
on the print. Well, on the film, that's where those little tiny dots are. So if you need to adjust the colors, nowadays you could just go into Photoshop and drag some sliders around. It's a piece of cake. Back then,
Mm.
you had to take a solvent and like basically wash portions of the film to decrease the amount of that particular color plate. So we had this new girl there, and she was a young kid back then. This was probably close to 20 years ago now,
Yeah.
but she was a young kid, and we had told her that he was a stripper. She wasn't old enough to know that that was actually a thing in the printing world.
Yeah.
So that made for an interesting conversation. But, so here we are telling her about this 70-something-year-old guy who used to be a stripper.
Yeah. And it's like you think of a 70-year-old dude stripping, and you're like, no.
That was exactly the conversation. And so he was actually
Yeah.
out on vacation when we had this conversation. And, we told him and his wife about this. And, his wife's like, no, Chrissy, come back here, come back here. No, I don't think you understand what a stripper is. She's like, no, I know. I don't want to hear anything. This is terrible. So, but so somebody who's been in an industry that long has such an incredible depth and breadth of knowledge. So I learned
Yeah.
so much from this man, and he was an amazing person. Basically treated me like his own son. It was great. I learned a tremendous amount from him, got a lot of contacts, and worked myself into a position where I was able to start planning for the next business. From there, I did bounce around a little bit. I knew that based on my previous failure, one of my weaknesses was sales. So
Mm.
from there, I went out and took a couple of sales jobs and wanted to improve that skill set because as an entrepreneur, that's an essential skill. The reality is it's essential for all of us. Like we all
Influence.
have,
Yeah.
right. We all have to convince people of things, whether you're a doctor or a parent or a business owner. So
Or you're
it's
thin on social media, thin, thick, bald, whatever. That's all those
yeah.
things.
So, I bounced around at a couple of jobs and then eventually started my next company. And, that ran for several years. I forget the exact amount. It was somewhere in the range of like 10 years.
Hmm.
And then I'm getting ready to go and rebrand the company, change the name, go through all this to present a different face for the company.
Mm.
And then I get hit with this mystery health crisis that almost killed me. And
Wow.
yeah, that was loads of fun. So, none of the doctors could figure anything out. We're still going through it today. I've made some improvements, but throughout the process, like for example, the first year, I didn't get off the couch. I was pretty much laying on the couch or lying in the bed 24/7.
Yeah.
And I was in constant pain from head to toe, from skin down to bone.
And it's not fibromyalgia. Wow.
No, we did think it was an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be that. We're still trying to figure out exactly what it is. May have stumbled across something. A couple of friends in the digital marketing industry had pointed me towards something.
Yeah.
And, we're exploring that right now. But, as you can imagine, spending a year on the couch does not do wonders for your business.
No, it doesn't.
That
Sometimes even more than a weekend can go over and destroy your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from that point, the business ground down to zero, and I pretty much had to start over. As we worked into the second year, I'm still dealing with a lot of the problems, but I'm able to kind of get up and move around. I still wasn't going out and doing a lot of business stuff, but I was able to kind of go out and, here and there sporadically. But for the most part, if I'm going out, it's, to go to a doctor's appointment at that point.
Yeah.
And then, as more time went on, as we kind of entered into the third year, that's where I started to, even though I'm in massive pain, I'm still out there. I'm doing the things I need to do to rebuild the business. And we've been kind of going from there up to where we are now. And like total, I think the whole health crisis thing has been something like 6 years now.
Yeah, it's a long time. And it's funny thing about vets is like you don't know what the pain they're going through until you get into their story.
Yeah. Well, and on that same note, when it comes to vets, like we already have an idea of what we can overcome because we've been through some horrendous experiences, whether it's physical or emotional, psychological, whatever. We have seen the worst case scenario for most of us. And so we know that we can go through things that others can't. We know that we can overcome things that others can't. And I think that's one of the things that, although I've had a difficult life in a lot of ways, I actually count that as a blessing because it's given me the opportunity to know what I can accomplish, what I can overcome. And I think it creates an environment of more hope, more optimism because you've already seen terrible things and overcome them.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. So I wanted to dive in a little bit more into the business failure, not like the exact details, but what lessons did you learn to succeed in the following? So now you are successful, CEO of your own business, and everything is now going better than what it is. And now you're at year 6 in Spartan Media, right?
I forget exactly when we reformed Spartan, but somewhere around that time frame, yeah.
Yeah. So what lessons did you learn?
Well, one of the things is that I didn't so much learn it, but it was hammered into me, is that things are not going to go the way that you expect them to. So you just need to constantly adapt, right? I talked about in the beginning how I was in a small town, and it was a little early in that process. Or as far as the internet goes, it was early.
Oh yeah.
The reality is, there's a lot of things I could have done differently to change that dynamic, right? There's nothing that would have stopped me from calling businesses in New York or Miami or Chicago or somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I was focused on the ground game, local businesses that I could go in and meet face to face. So for whatever reason, while I was always adapting and adjusting to everything in the military, when I got out here and that situation presented, I tried some things, but I didn't push it anywhere near as far as I had in the military. And that was a big mistake. And that was really hammered home that like there is no resting. Like you have to just push with, take whatever path you have to get where you want to go.
Sounds like an MCI tactic you should have brought into the tool belt.
Yeah, there's, I think that was the biggest one. But some of the other things are, we can't rely on ourselves entirely. Right? And that was something that, you're not going to go storm an enemy fortress by yourself.
No.
You try and build a business by yourself, right? Part of that comes down to ego. A lot of us want to be like, hey, I'm the champion, I'm the hero, I did this.
Yes.
And you can certainly accomplish some badass things on your own, but you're going to accomplish so much more working with other people, whether it's employees, contractors, partners, just friends, whatever. That's something you really need to leverage is your connections. We did it in the military. It was not because of weakness. It was because that's the right way to do it. That's the right way to accomplish something significant. So that's something else that I think was really hammered in for me.
That's really cool. And so with that, one of the things that usually take the most precedence is like with business and the transition getting on the military is how did you keep your relationships intact? You went through the medical trials, you went through the business trials. Sounds like you probably even went almost homeless because of the business tanked and bankruptcy, because I know those struggles. So
Right.
how did you keep the relationship intact? Because a lot of people, a lot of veterans would just be like, all right, the boardroom exploded. The bedroom and living room is just minutes to seconds away. How did you keep everything intact?
So the short answer is I didn't. Everything was a colossal mess from top to bottom. In fact, I was actually homeless for a while. There was a period where I was living in my car. And then there was another period where I took a job somewhere. I mentioned that I was working on improving my sales skills. So one of the jobs I took was with a mortgage company. And so I would just come in super early, or it seemed like I was coming in super early, I guess. And then I would work super late, and pretty much everyone would leave. I had the keys, and I would clean up in the bathroom sink. I would lay out in my office and crash out for the night and just have that alarm set, get up in the morning before anyone got in. And as far as anybody knew, I'm just getting in there first thing in the morning, and I'm the last one to leave. So, that is exactly what happened. Is everything did fall apart.
Yeah.
But as far as the relationships goes, I think I learned a lot of lessons about evaluating people, because there was a lot of people who were right by my side when things were going great. But they disappeared as soon as things got tough.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. From the expression I see, you've experienced that as well.
3 times.
All right. So I learned to be more aware of people and their intentions. I'm a very loyal person. If somebody's by my side, I'm going to do anything I can for them and with them.
Totally agree.
On the same note, like if somebody is manipulative or a user or something like that, don't be afraid to cut those people loose, because like everything about you is formed by your environment. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who are taking advantage of you and using you, then that's going to suck your mental energy out, and it's going to waste your time. So just if somebody's not a fit, cut them, but try to find the people that make sense to have around. And on that note, we need to be proactive about these people, right? Right now, everybody with this whole COVID thing, we're in lockdown and we're all in varying states of anxiety or depression or whatever. What's going on. So it's easy to go into this cocoon and just be like, all right, I'm not talking to anyone until this is all fixed. What I like to do is I set reminders for myself, because it's really easy to stop communicating with somebody. And it's not that there's anything wrong. It's just, I got busy and didn't get around to it.
Of course.
And when we look at the social media aspect, like if you're not engaging with somebody, let's say we're talking about Facebook, if you're not regularly engaging with someone, the algorithm starts to push their content down. So you may not see it. So I could be sitting here scrolling through Facebook and look at somebody and be like, oh, well, I need to, comment on that or send them a message or whatever. If you don't get around to it, then they start showing up less and less. And then you're not even being reminded to talk to them.
Correct.
So there's tools like, there's a tool called Boomerang that ties into Gmail and Office, right? And
interesting.
So send you, what's that?
I never heard of that tool. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's I think there may be a paid and a free version. I don't remember for sure. I use the paid version, but basically it's, let's say somebody sends you an email, you can set up a reminder that if you don't respond, or if they don't respond within whatever time period or a particular date or whatever, it will bounce back into your inbox. So now you have a reminder to go follow up with them.
Yeah, that's ingenious, just to not miss mail and stuff like that. And your clients, like you get like say 300 emails a day, and let's say you pound out about 50, and then it gets buried in your box, and then you tell people, send me a fresh copy. Instead, you have Boomerang just send it right back to you.
Right, and that functionality is built into a lot of things. Like for example, HubSpot uses it. There's they've got their own integrated thing. but you can find this in most CRMs nowadays. So that's just an example. Something else I've been doing is I keep a spreadsheet, and it's got the people, and it's got their link to their social profiles, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever they are. So I will actually batch time to where I can go out, and even though I may not see that person's content in my feed because of the algorithm, I can go to their profile, see what they've posted, comment on it, like, share, whatever has to be done there. And then you're keeping that engagement going, even though, and it's actually a more effective way to do it, right? Because if you're just sitting here scrolling through Facebook, you're wasting a ton of time. But we need to build those relationships and strengthen those relationships. So we do need to engage with them. We just need to be strategic in how we do it.
Yeah, I do very similar in that regard, but I just choose 10 to 15 people a day to go in there. And then sometimes you look at what the active people are on there and I talk to them, and then there's content and then comes back up. So that's my intentionality. So if I actually connect with you and you're like, who are you? I actually chose you as a friend on Facebook, and I'm actively wanting to engage you, not just because of business, but personally, I want to know you. So if you ever get a text from me, that's the reason why I'm being intentional.
Something else I do in that area is what I call finding the haystack, right? So when I meet somebody, pretty much right off the bat, I'm going to think about who in my network might be useful for them, and who might they be useful for. So generally, if I meet somebody, I'm going to send at least 3 or 4 introductions within a couple of days. But then also keep those people in the back of your mind as time goes on, because you're going to run into a ton of people. And if you make a habit of helping people by connecting them with opportunities, or whatever the situation is, you're connecting people with things, then first of all, you're making the world a better place. I think we all want that.
I'd agree.
You're also making yourself more valuable to everybody. So it really it has a tremendous impact on what you can accomplish.
I would totally agree upon that. So those are awesome, tactics. But let's get to the deep of the tactics before the end. So, so what superhero tactics led you to success from the bedroom to the boardroom? So you have the kids, you have the business now, and looks like everything is thriving. What main things did you go over and pivot in your life that became tactics in your life to have that succeed? Because you had the boardroom collapsed, everything there, and now everything is going back up. What did you have to implement in your life as a tactic to say, this is going to work, and this is what makes me thrive?
So there's a couple of things there. One is you have to be very clear about what you want. The mistake that I see a lot of people make, especially entrepreneurs, is they want to do all the things, and it's just, let's go throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and go from there. Right? And that's not an efficient use of your time. I have, as most creative people do, what you would call shiny object syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Right now I'm on the tail end of wrapping up a project that we're building for our own self. But I've got my next 8 ideas already ready to go. I just need to finish this and then start executing on those one by one.
Correct.
But in order to do this effectively, I need to know exactly what I want to accomplish, and then cut out anything that doesn't move me towards that. So, somebody will reach out to me like, hey, we've got this, networking thing over here. Well, great. I could go there and I could meet some people, but they're not going to be my potential clients because of the difference in price point, right? You go to a little BNI, that's generally small companies. They don't have the kind of budget to do what needs to be done. So that's just not a fit. So even though there's some awesome people I could meet there, and maybe there's an opportunity, the likelihood is that it's not. So I don't go. Or, somebody wants me to come speak at a particular event. If there's not something within that's going to move me towards my goal, I'm not going to go. Even though I'm on a stage, it could be a big stage, could be a big organization, but if that's not a good fit for the goals I'm trying to accomplish, I'm going to cut that out of the mix.
You're going to be wasting your time. I've had people offer me opportunities, and it's it doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit in the vision, like Zig Ziglar says, I'm going to say no, because if it doesn't fit, it's not worth it.
Right. And that's something that, and we can even take that further and take it all the way down to clients, for example. Oh, well, why don't you want to do this project? It's money, right? Well, yes, but it's not the kind of client that I want to work with, or it's not the kind of project that I want to, whatever the case is. So, even all the way down to the point of revenue, I'm going to walk away from revenue if it doesn't align with what I'm trying to accomplish.
Correct.
So that's a really big facet of it. The other side is being very clear externally in what you do, because that's going to manifest the opportunities. Because if you're talking about, oh, well, I do a little of this, a little of that, a little bit of this over here, some of that over there, nobody has any idea what the hell to do with that.
I
But
did that early in my getting out of the military with my business. I'm like, oh, I help people with relationships. So broad and so wide, and I got so nobody.
right. I remember those. You used to do a ton of videos on that stuff back in the day.
Oh yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and then it took me breaking my back about 3 years ago to get a clue. And I was like, this guy challenged me, and he told me to just restart my life, $10 to $15 an hour. I'm like, you should be glad I couldn't get out of this bed. He told me to give up my military career too, and I was like, but that was what I needed. I needed that another kick in the somewhere else while I was getting kicked in the back because my back was broken. So it was like a double whammy. But
well, it's funny you mention that, because I think as veterans, that's something we need. This whole your typical corporate HR politically correct approach to things is not going to work with veterans. You have to take that almost drill instructor throwing the knife hands, yelling at you, here's what you need to do kind of approach.
yeah,
So, and on that note, one of the other big things is mentorship, and that's in both directions. That's both the receiving and the giving, right? Because
correct.
if you're receiving, you're going to have the opportunity to learn so much more, so much faster, and you can learn by making mistakes. I've tried plenty of that. Ask my wife; she'll tell you about plenty of them. But you can learn so much more by actually avoiding those mistakes in the first place, and save yourself so much time, trouble, headaches. But on the other side of that, if you're mentoring other people, first of all, it'll make you feel good, but you're also going to understand the material better because you're trying to convey it to somebody that doesn't have your depth and breadth of knowledge.
Correct.
That was something I realized when I started writing a lot. I write for many publications, Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, a whole slew of others. And the SEO field is very technical.
Oh, it is. Yeah, drastically.
I found that as I'm explaining these things, I had a tendency to kind of talk over people's heads. So by writing for people who aren't necessarily at that level, it gave me an opportunity to not only explain it better, but also to understand it better. Because when somebody's going to throw out some weird question that you've never considered, and you're like, oh well, never thought about it, and then it starts percolating these other ideas. So it's really good for getting your mind into a different mode of thinking, and helping you to become more effective at what you're doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So last and certainly not least, we're doing a double tactics roam on every single interview we do. What if you had to go back to yourself before getting out of the service, or a young soldier getting out, what would you give them as 3 superhero tactics to have them to go over and to thrive? Because a lot of times we live and learn, and that's totally BS. That's why we're named Learn It Live at this business, because we want to learn and then live. Because I don't want to just keep touching the stove and burn myself. It hurts. Oh yeah, I shouldn't do that. And that's what we do. The same thing in the military. We'll just pull ourselves by our bootstraps. They snapped, buddy. And everybody knew they were going to snap, but we'll just keep pulling them. So let's go over and not pull the bootstraps. And what would you give yourself or someone that's getting out of the service as tactics? 3 of them.
So one is, don't worry so much about the rules or what people think, or any of these things that might cause us to not do the things that we should do or that we want to do, right? I talked about earlier how the business failed because people didn't think that web design mattered, or it was even going to last, things like that. Like, the reality is, I should have not paid attention to those people. There's a lot of ways I could have approached that differently and continued going with that. We see this problem a lot with social media as well. People are afraid to get out there and say something, or they're afraid to get on video and talk about their company because they're afraid of how people will see them. So just don't worry about that stuff. It doesn't matter. Just do what you need to do and just keep pushing. The other thing is, a lot of us, we get this idea that, I'm going to go and take over the world. And sure, maybe you will, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. We tend to overestimate what we're going to accomplish in a year, and we tend to underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years.
Yeah.
When we look at somebody who's successful, we see what they've accomplished. We don't see all the failures, all the mistakes, all the heartbreak, all the frustration that led up to that. All that we see is the end result. So people go out and they'll do a thing, they'll put some energy into it, they'll try some things, and then it doesn't go the way they want, or they don't get the traction as quickly as they want. So they're like, well, this isn't worth it, or this doesn't work, or whatever. And they don't realize that it's like every little step counts. You launch a podcast, every single one of those listeners, right? Like, it's like, oh, it's only one listener. Well, no, it's one listener more than you had yesterday. And then then it's 2, then it's 5, then it's 20, then it's 50. I mean, there's a guy I know that generally gets about 5,000 new subscribers to his YouTube channel every single month.
Yeah.
That's nuts. But it didn't start that way. It was very slow going. So think about the big picture and focus on that. The same way that, I was a grunt, I was in the infantry. I remember going on these humps. I know that all of the military did it every now and then, but we did it all the time. And I remember, you'd have on your pack, everything's digging into you, it's hot, your legs are chafing as you're walking. And if you sit there and focus on, like, the barracks is 12 miles away, you're gonna fall out.
Yeah.
But if you're focusing on, on what you're going to accomplish at the end, rather than, I'm in so much pain right now, then you're going to fail. So just keep that end in mind, and that'll be a game changer. And then the last thing is never stop learning. I see so many people that they're like, oh, I'm an expert, I know all the stuff, I'm the top of my field, but they're not keeping up. They've kind of got to this point where they're resting on their laurels, and then they start to fall behind. I see that a lot in my industry. You see a lot of people who talk about, well, this is how search engines work, but is it really, right? Like, are you testing? Are you conducting experiments? Are you doing things to find out if what you think is actually true? Are you trying new approaches? And that applies in every industry. It doesn't matter, whether you're dealing with people or computers or machines, whatever. There's always going to be so much to learn. There's always going to be so many new opportunities, and we just need to stay on top of that. We need to set aside time for that. Somebody that I know and respect, Dennis Yu, who I think you may know. No?
I know a lot of people, but I'll have to go look back.
He and I spoke at MIC last year.
Okay.
Keynotes. And he spends like half of his day learning new stuff.
Now I remember who he is. I remember you on stage. That's where I met you. It all flashed back. I was like, oh yeah, fancy suit. Yeah.
Yes. So, he's at the pinnacle of his industry. The guy is out at Facebook headquarters on a regular basis. He's got, hundreds and hundreds of people in his team, and he's constantly out here sharing useful information. And like, I don't care what kind of crazy question you throw at him, he's got the answer. But still, he spends half of his day learning. So I think that says a lot for how important that is.
No, that's definitely true. You gotta learn. That's the thing. If you're alive, you need to be learning. You don't just stop. And we always, at least at Learning, we always focus the most amount of learning in the bedroom, then the living room and the boardroom, because that's what's going to carry. Because now you got the legacy that's going to go with you. So I want to thank you for your time. We're going to go over comments real quick and then pop up your website for anybody that wants to connect with you. Let's see if there's any worthwhile comments. Sometimes I get trolls, so I'm going to populate those. It's very interesting sometimes. Let's see. It seems Laura jumped in, said something about Scranton. Now, let's see. People are just being funny. I'm seeing if there's any questions. Let's see. Casey said it was a great point. Separate the wheat and chaff and only push towards the broader goals of entrepreneurial pursuit. Let's see, anything else? Somebody had a question about MCI. Was that Marine what exactly?
Marine Corps Institute.
Marine Corps Institute. That's what
Believe it or not, it's not actually a coloring book.
Yeah, I thought it was Marine Communications something. That's what I thought it was. But let's see. Nope. Everything else is just, yeah, this one probably good. A good quote that you had. They loved your quote. They quoted you. So take that and put that in your next book.
I actually, that's not my quote. I can't remember where I heard it, but yeah, I think it's definitely very solid. Thank you, Laura.
Yep. Laura, you're going to have to research it for us to go and give proper cred. Yep. Oh, is that a question? What is one thing you would recommend someone do this week? David Bell, that's actually a question.
That's a little broad question. Given the quarantine, you should probably take a shower and change your clothes, I think.
So, David, I would probably go and recommend that you go over and continue to learn whatever we're focusing on. Just make that time, like what you said earlier.
On a more serious note, I would suggest creating a piece of content. Like, we should be creating content all the time. Whether it's a video, whether it's just a post on social media, an article somewhere. Creating content on a regular basis is good, because it helps you to refine your thoughts, but it's also sharing your knowledge and demonstrating your expertise. And on top of that, it's helping other people to see that they can do the same thing. And I feel like the more people we have out here who are doing what they're drawn to do, the more that we'll accomplish as a whole.
Yep. And now he clarified, sales related.
Make a sales call. Call somebody. Don't be afraid.
There you go.
They can't kill you through the phone.
No, not yet anyway. All right, so if you want to connect with Spartan Media, that's his website. And any final parting shots before we head out?
Just, don't worry too much about what other people think or what other people say. Just get out there and do what is like your driving passion. Do it. And, just keep pushing. It's not going to work right the first time out of the gate, but, don't let that get you discouraged.
Yep. And thank you for coming on our show. And we do have a TV show, by the way, War Hero to Superhero, that airs every Wednesday at 7:30. Now, when we do interviews, we allow one of the 5 guests to come on our show. So we upgrade them to TV on War Hero to Superhero. So if you want Jeremy to go over and be on TV, it is the 3-second view. The more views, the better. So he's got from now until 3 days from now to get the most views. So we do all our guests. They get a 3-day turnaround. If they get the most views, they get to come on our show the next month. So if you want Jeremy on our show to be elevated up to TV platform, just keep going over and hitting those views. And again, it only takes 3 seconds. Now, I'd recommend watching all 37 minutes and 27 seconds. But if you don't have the time and you're just trying to get them to elevate to TV, just give 3 seconds. Because that's the algorithm on Facebook, to my understanding. So 3-second view will help him get up to the next level. So thank you for your time.
I want to throw out there is there's a typo in that URL. It's Spartan Media, but I think everybody can put 2 and 2 together there and figure out the correct URL.
Yeah, I can correct it real quick if I need to. So let me see.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dave, by the way.
All right. Well, you might as well spell it out for the audience, and I'll spell it out right for you. So how do you spell it again?
SPARTANMEDIA.
Yep, there we go. I will fix that right now. So there we go. There we go.
Outstanding.
Awesome. So if you went to the other URL, don't get mad at the 15 seconds. Just go back and correct that. So, all right. So thank you for joining, and we're always learning and living. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right.